You've seen the movie. The slow-motion kicks, the perfect abs, the CGI armies, Gerard Butler screaming into the sky. It was epic. It was cinematic. And a lot of it was wrong. Not the courage, not the sacrifice, not the impossible odds. Those parts? Actually true. But the real story of what happened at Thermopylae in 480 BC is stranger, darker, and more extraordinary than anything Hollywood put on screen. There were more than 300 men. The Persians weren't monsters, and the man who destroyed them all wasn't even a soldier. Today, we are telling the story the movie didn't. This is the true story of the 300 Spartans at Thermopylae. At Time Nexus, we go beyond the headlines and the Hollywood versions and get into what history actually recorded. No dramatization, no myth, just the real story, told the way it deserves to be. Let's go. To understand Thermopylae, you need to understand the world it happened in. In 480 BC, the Persian Empire was the most powerful civilization on Earth. It stretched from modern-day Iran, across Egypt, through Turkey, and into Central Asia. Tens of millions of people lived under its control. No empire before it had ever come close to its size. And its king, Xerxes, was furious. His father, Darius, had tried to conquer Greece 10 years earlier. The Greeks crushed that invasion at the Battle of Marathon. It was a humiliation Persia had never forgotten. So Xerxes spent years planning revenge. He gathered warriors from across his entire empire: Egyptians, Babylonians, Ethiopians, Indians, Arabs. Ancient sources describe an army of over 1 million men. Modern historians put the number between 100,000 and 300,000. Either way, it was a force the world had never seen. And it was marching straight for Greece. Most Greek city-states surrendered without a fight. They took one look at what was coming and swore loyalty to Persia before a single arrow was fired. But a coalition of Greek states refused. And they needed somewhere to stop what was coming. They found it at a narrow coastal pass on the Greek mainland. Thermopylae. In ancient Greek, hot gates, named after the sulfur springs that ran nearby. Here's where the movie gets complicated. The Spartans in the film are warriors with perfect bodies, witty one-liners, and a flair for the dramatic. The real Spartans were something far more unsettling. Sparta wasn't a city of philosophers or merchants. It was a military state, built entirely around producing the perfect soldier. From the age of 7, Spartan boys were taken from their families and placed into a brutal training system called the agoge. For over a decade, they were deliberately starved, exposed to harsh weather, forced to fight each other, and taught to endure pain in silence. By the time a Spartan reached adulthood, he wasn't just trained, he was rebuilt. But here's what the movie leaves out entirely. There weren't just 300 Spartans at Thermopylae. Leonidas arrived with roughly 7,000 Greek warriors, including soldiers from Thespe, Corinth, Arcadia, and other city-states. The 300 Spartans were his personal royal guard. The movie shrinks the alliance to make the Spartans look more heroic. The real history doesn't need that trick. Leonidas himself was in his mid-60s, not the young warrior king Zack Snyder put on screen. He was experienced, calculating, and he knew exactly what this mission was. He wasn't going to Thermopylae to win. he was going to buy Greece time. When Xerxes arrived and saw the Greeks calmly eating, resting, and, according to the historian Herodotus, combing their hair, he reportedly laughed. He sent a messenger demanding surrender and the handing over of their weapons. Leonidas sent back 4 words: "Come and take them." Xerxes waited 4 days, expecting the Greeks to back down. They didn't move. On the 5th day, he attacked. What happened next stunned the entire Persian army. The Greeks fought in a tight formation called a phalanx, shields locked, spears forward. In the narrow pass, the Persian numbers meant nothing. They could only attack in waves, and every wave broke against the Greek wall. Xerxes sent in his elite troops, the Immortals, his most feared warriors. They were pushed back. For 2 full days, the Greeks held the line. Thousands of Persians fell. The Greeks barely lost anyone. The movie captures this part reasonably well. The discipline, the formation, the tactical genius of fighting in a choke point. That part is real. But then came the moment that changed everything. And it didn't come from the battlefield. A local Greek man named Ephialtes approached the Persian camp. He knew something the Persians desperately needed: a secret mountain path that looped around Thermopylae and came out directly behind the Greek position. He offered to show them in exchange for a reward. Xerxes accepted. That night, Persian soldiers moved silently through the mountains. A Greek lookout spotted them at dawn. Leonidas received the news. He understood immediately what it meant. The position was lost. The Persians would surround them within hours. So he made a decision. He told most of the Greek allies to leave, retreat, go home and fight another day. Most of them did, and historians largely agree this was the right call. Their survival mattered for what came next. But the 300 Spartans stayed. A small number of Thespians and Thebans stayed too, several hundred men who refused to abandon them. The movie barely mentions them. History shouldn't forget them. Spartan law said a king never retreats. Whether Leonidas stayed out of law, out of duty, or out of a calculated decision to buy Greece one more day, we don't know for certain. What we know is what he reportedly told his men that final morning. Eat well, for tonight we dine in the underworld. The Persians attacked from both sides. The Greeks abandoned defense and charged forward, deep into the Persian ranks, fighting with everything they had. When spears broke, they drew swords. When swords broke, they fought barehanded. Leonidas was killed in the battle. His men formed a circle around his body to protect it. In the end, they were buried under a storm of Persian arrows. Every last one of them. On the hillside where they fell, the Greeks later carved an inscription. It read, "Go, tell the Spartans, stranger passing by, that here, obedient to their laws, we lie." The movie ends with Thermopylae as a defeat. And militarily, it was. Persia took the pass. They marched on Athens and burned it to the ground. But here's what the film doesn't show you, because this is the part that actually matters. Thermopylae broke something in the Persian army's confidence. Before that battle, Greek city-states were surrendering without a fight. The Persian force felt unstoppable. But then 300 men, plus their allies, held off the greatest military power on Earth for 3 days. That changed the psychology of the war entirely. The Greeks rallied. Weeks later, the Greek navy destroyed the Persian fleet at the Battle of Salamis, using tactics inspired by the same bottleneck strategy Leonidas had proved at Thermopylae. Then at Plataea, the Greek army crushed Persia's ground forces. Xerxes retreated. Greece survived. And because Greece survived, Western democracy, philosophy, science, and culture were allowed to develop. The intellectual foundations of the modern world trace a direct line back to ancient Athens. And Athens survived because 300 men, and several hundred more the movie forgot to mention, refused to move. That is what Hollywood left on the cutting room floor.
The movie gave you the legend. Now you have the history. 300 Spartans, thousands of allies, one traitor, 3 days, and a moment so extraordinary that 2,500 years later, we're still talking about it. That's what we do at Time Nexus. We take the stories history actually recorded and tell them the way they deserve to be told. If this video gave you something new, subscribe. We post every week, and there is a lot more history to cover. And if you want to go even deeper, watch our video on early human life. Same channel, a completely different world. See you in the next one.